Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Dear Umair, where we read Umair's amazing articles and then we have discussion based on them. And by the way, everyone is welcome to join us at these meetings. See the link in the description to join these meetings. We typically do these on Fridays, but increasingly at other days of the week as well. Today's article is called "We Have Just One Decade Left to Fix the Future." And as you know, when I'm reading, I put my background to red. So if you've already read the article, you can skip through the red portion. And then for comments, I take off the red background. Welcome everyone who's here. Feel free to say hello at any point and just jump in anytime, even if I'm reading. And then I'll pause the reading and we'll talk about whatever there is to talk about, or we can get through the whole article and comment after that. We have just one decade left to fix the future. Humanity's path divides into irreversible collapse and ongoing progress right now. This was published on August 10th. We're doing this on August 13th. We have, by my reckoning, about a decade until what? For what? To right humanity's ship, my friends. Do you think we are anywhere near ready for that task? Are we even undertaking it, let alone aware of it as the challenge of this century, this generation, this age? It's every bit as significant as a great world war, as a supervolcano. It's even more dire than COVID. It's irreversibility, lethality, things that we can't later change, getting locked in, baked in, hardwired. Humanity's three great existential threats are going to reach a point of irreversible lethality in a decade, a point where it's game over. The future is locked in and it's a horrific one. One decade, maybe two, if we're really generous. Let's start with those three threats. Let's start those three threats with climate change. Are you sick of hearing about it? Do you turn off your brain the moment someone like me mentions it? It's okay, I do too, more than I should, but we need to talk about the state of the world, my friends, and we must begin there. Recent estimates say we have about 10 years left to limit global warming to reasonable limits, about an average of 1.5 degrees or so. More than that, and the effects start to become catastrophic, though even that level of warming is severe and ruinous. A decade. We have just a decade left to prevent catastrophic. I chuckle because we don't have a decade. We've got like months, but I'll get to my perspective later. We have just a decade left to prevent catastrophic climate change. 1 decade. Let me put that in perspective. That's 2 presidential elections. That's maybe 2 prime ministers. That's 2 Olympics. It's the blink of an eye. What are we doing about it? So far, we are accomplishing precisely nothing. We might be pretending to be working on the problem if we're in the field or if we support green politics like Green New Deals and whatnot. But the truth is that we are actually achieving precisely nothing so far. We're just happily going on melting down our home. Global emissions continue to climb, and there isn't a single carbon neutral country on planet Earth yet. The first one, the EU hopes to be that by 2050. It leads the world by a very long way. It's a noble aspiration, but there's just one tiny problem. We reached the point of irreversible climate catastrophe 20 years before that. As a world, we are epically failing the challenge of climate change. We are failing it like an idiot fails his life's biggest exam. We are failing most obvious existential threats incredibly and massively in a way that's shocking, alarming, and literally a little crazy. Do you really think that just 10 years from now there will be any further progress than there is now? That there will be a single carbon neutral country in the world? How could there be? The problem, which I'll come to, is that our paradigms and systems are stuck in the past. We can't develop carbon neutral economies and societies not because of technology, but because our paradigms and systems literally give us no reason whatsoever to. They are built on colonial mentalities of pillage, rape, plunder, and domination. We treat the planet, in short, like a slave. Hence, our economies and societies don't count the planet, skies, rivers, and forests as inherently valuable to begin with, just things to be consumed and destroyed in the process of enriching their masters. So who's going to stop capitalists and hedge funds and mega corporations from burning, boiling, draining, and depleting them? Who's going to write the laws that give rivers the same rights as people? Who's going to put them in their constitutions? Exactly no one, as far as I can see. And yet a thing that has no inherent value is exactly like a slave, something that can be used and abused until its dying day. But we have made the planet our slave, and we are committing a kind of genocide upon it. That's not a metaphor. My second challenge is mass extinction. We are killing off somewhere between 50 to 80% of all life on the planet. Think about that for a second. All life on the planet, which is the only life we know anywhere at all. We are simply killing it off. What's wrong with us? Yet the pattern of this genocide upon life itself is also a self-destructive one. We're chopping away the roots of the ecosystems we ourselves depend on. The insects and fish and little birds and plants and trees are dying off first. When they go, a sudden collapse is likely to follow as the whole chain implodes on itself. What are we doing about it? The truth is that we're doing even less than we are about climate change. Nobody really considers mass extinction a problem yet. Institutionally, meaning no political party, no government, no organization, no corporation. Literally nobody in the world cares yet, except you, me, and a handful of conservationists. But how long do we have until our ecosystems begin to collapse? The truth is that nobody knows when, but we do know that it will happen suddenly, swiftly, and without much warning, just like ecological collapses tend to. Let's say that we have a decade left to stop, reverse, mitigate, all that too. Do you think we have a chance, a snowball's chance in hell, of building global systems to protect life on Earth? How would we begin? Who would write international laws to protect rivers and trees and little birds? Who would enforce them? Who will stop a global economy that thinks killing off all life on the planet is perfectly, as long as a few, I think he meant perfectly okay, as long as a few billionaires turn into trillionaires? The truth, so far as I can see, is that nobody really has the power, will, or insight to stop the collapse of life on the planet, yet alone even think about it or see it. Not yet, anyways. Remember how we treat the planet like a slave because our systems are essentially old supremacist ones in slightly more polite disguise? We treat all life on the planet as our slave too. And I'm hardly some angry anti-fur protester. I'm pointing out a cold, analytical truth. We treat life itself as our slave. And so it's no surprise whatsoever we're killing it off, having abused and violated it just like we did with slaves. But the problem is that we depend crucially on life on planet Earth for our own lives. It is not our slave. It is our mother and father and bread and soil and air and water. We are only its friends, its servants, its guardians, not its slave masters, which is exactly what we still fatally wrongly and foolishly imagine ourselves to be. So our second problem is even bigger and more tragic than our first, but we are even further away from dealing with it. So far away, in fact, that it has yet to sink into our consciousness at all. And yet we have just a few years left to begin solving it. Do you think we're likely to get anywhere in 10 years? That brings me to my third problem. What are we likely to spend the next 10 years doing? Let's take a hard look at America and Britain. Instead of dealing with any of their real problems, stagnation, inequality, institutional rot, corruption, malinvestment, greed, selfishness, what have they spent the last several years doing? Trying desperately to prevent the self-inflicted catastrophes of fascism and nationalism. Instead of dealing with a single one of its problems, Britain has spent half a decade in the quagmire of Brexit. Hence, life today is worse in every respect than it was just a half decade ago. Instead of dealing with a single one of its problems, America has spent few months pretending everything is back to normal, even while Trumpism has a resurgence and the GOP is eroding democracy by the day. Hence, American life has simply fallen apart. Many Americans, probably the majority in many regards, live like people in poor countries now. Do you see the theme I'm trying to point out? Let me make it clearer. We're likely to spend the next 10 years dealing with fascism, nationalism, extremism, all forms of self-inflicted political ruin, from kleptocracy to theocracy to oligarchy to authoritarianism. Why? Because the global economy is stagnating. A new class of global super rich have emerged who have essentially hoarded the gains from growth, which means that middle classes either outright imploding, as in America or Britain, or struggling, like in Europe and much of Asia. In simpler terms, capitalism made capitalists rich, but everyone else is left to live at the edge of perpetual ruin. And yet here we are, failing to question capitalism too, even while the capitalists literally become trillionaires, while the average prole in a rich country now grows a little poorer and more desperate and afraid every single year. How foolish is that? People who live lives of ruinous fear, anxiety, and despair turn on their neighbors, friends, brothers, mothers. They turn to strongmen. Stanley's here, so I'm going to pause recording. To authoritarians for safety, for worth, for validation, to feel respected and powerful again. By demonizing and dehumanizing the weakest and most powerless in a society, simply taking from them what is missing in their own stagnating lives. These problems are exacerbated in societies which, like America and Britain, are based on people feeling superior, supreme, above all the rest. Hence, the extreme idiots' nationalism of Brexit and the fascism of Trumpism took root there first. But they are hardly the only ones. The extremist wave has spread across the globe, from Sweden to Germany to India. Nobody is safe because economics determines the destiny of nations. When middle classes struggle, implode, and fall apart, the inescapable result is the chain reaction of nationalism, extremism, and fascism. That was the great lesson of World War II, and we haven't learned it yet. My bet is we are going to spend the next decade just trying to keep the fascists at bay. And if we can do that, we will count it as a victory. In a way, I suppose it is. but the truth is more difficult. This decade, excuse me, is a crucial turning point for humanity. It is the point at which our existential threats will all become irreversible. The point at which climate change becomes catastrophic, at which mass extinction will begin collapsing all the systems we depend upon, from food to water to air to oil to soil, at which a stagnant global economy will harden into something like a feudal caste system, a new class of trillionaires, essentially the kings and lords of a new world of peasants and serfs. This decade is a turning point, the choice between irreversible forms of collapse and ongoing progress, between a new dark age and the continuing upwards trajectory of humankind. But so far, mostly when we're not in deep, profound denial, we couldn't care less because there's Facebook and Instagram and Netflix to comfort binge on. Our leaders certainly couldn't care less. They are utterly incompetent. Mostly as societies, we couldn't care less. Who does that leave exactly? We have just one decade left. Just one decade, in my estimation, to begin undoing those three existential threats. They aren't existential threats in the cartoon sense, the end of humanity. They're existential threats in a real one, a genuinely dangerous one. They will take a world of peace and progress with them. They will reduce human civilization to charred ashes. They will lead to a new dark age. There will be countries who survive and even prosper, sure, but they will be archipelagos of light in a sea of darkness. Every one will be a social democracy. They will be places probably like Sweden and Canada, which can distribute their gains better and therefore invest more of their surplus in things of real worth, and therefore can keep growing their surplus, their real wealth. But the rest of the world is not going to survive the three existential threats of the 21st century. Yes, I mean that. My three threats are going to shatter countries apart like twigs. Do you think I'm joking? Please take a look at the United Kingdom. It's not going to be one after Brexit, just England against its first three colonies. Think about what happens when Miami and Manhattan begin to drown. How united do you think the states will be when they curse people in red states for their folly and ignorance? The three existential threats of the 21st century: climate change, mass extinction, and capitalism, which drives them, are going to rip the world apart. They are going to fracture countries into different regions, ones which choose progress and ones which cling to regress. As they do that, people will flee, just as they have in, for example, Syria. But where will there be to go? The world will be even more nationalistic, thanks to stagnant capitalism. The result will be a world of broken societies, refugees, waves of migration. It will be a world of shortages, of rationing, and of all the things that come with them: crime, profiteering, smuggling. It will be one where violence is increasingly considered a perfectly reasonable solution to all the problems above. It will be one where people's thoughts, movements, and actions are carefully monitored and controlled for the sake of eking out dwindling profits from dying systems. It will be a time when all the ignorance and folly of human history resurfaces, from war to genocide to concentration camps, just as in a collapsing America. We have just one decade to prevent the blighted, ruined world from becoming the only one. From that path becoming the only path. From that trajectory getting locked into our futures. Just one decade. So far, my friends, we are doing nothing whatsoever to prevent all the above. We might think we are, we might imagine we are, but we are just flattering ourselves. We are just preening for the sake of comfortably inflated egos. We are trying, sure, some of us, but we are not accomplishing anything so far, and not nearly enough to change anything. The truth is that the world is losing the future by the day now, and not enough of us care or are even aware to really change the future from going dark. Not yet. So let us start there, just there, by recognizing how crucial this decade is for humanity and treating it that way. Not wasting our time sharing celebrity selfies to escape the end of the world, which our very folly brings about through its negligence, selfishness, and shattering ignorance. Denial, negligence, and abandonment, after all, are choices too. Umair. All right, well, with that reading, we throw it open for a discussion. So feel free to jump in and share what you have to share with Umair and audience. Passing the talking feather.
Well, I would have to say that it is what it says on the can, basically. We do have, 10 years to make either some radical changes in society, or go down the wrong path altogether, the path of no return. So, I'm not sure who said it, but we have this could be a utopian world if we choose, or it can be hell if we choose, and we seem to be choosing the latter. So I would say as well that not all of it is choice, because I would say the majority of the problem is the fact that the majority of people are actually not even informed as to what the severity of the problem is. So when you're in the dark about something, you can't really do anything about it. So that's the biggest problem, is that there is no sense of agency, because there doesn't be any sense of the problem that's surrounding people. So who's going to do anything about it is the question that Umair is asking. Well, I would say we, as in we the people, can only do something about it now, because the leaders have not done anything about it for the last couple of decades. I mean, we've had, as I said today, 25 cop-outs. So they want to start copping on now, like they don't have a time for any more cops. It's this one or none. So they better get together and get their heads together. But it's up to people to put the pressure on them, and the people don't know how to put pressure on if they're not aware of the problem. So the key problem is awareness, simple and plain. People are just not aware of what this problem is and the severity of it, and how fast the clock is ticking on us. And most importantly, they're not aware that we already have technologies around us that are capable of dealing with the problems and buying us time to actually deal with the more severe problem of drawing down CO2, which is the cause of warming anyway on the planet. But we haven't got the technology to do that en masse yet, but we do have technology available to buy us time to do it with the solar radiation projects that are available to us. So there is agency there. It's just that the majority of people and the masses aren't aware that they have agency, because they're not aware they need to have agency. Passing the ball.
Yeah, good stuff, James. And I think my comments are pretty much the same. Just the premise of the article is that nobody's doing anything and nobody will do anything about global overheating. And a big problem is not enough people understand the situation. Largely, those that even care are bombarded with misinformation. And the fact, what Umair states as a fact is nobody's doing anything about it. is also not true. There's plenty, well, I won't say plenty, there are a good number of us doing something about it. Other than conversation, research is done. There's a number of good projects. Marine cloud brightening for one, the Mir project, ICE 9/11 project. These are all three of these are safe compared to projects that talk about inserting aerosols into the atmosphere that may have catastrophic, dangerous results. You know, we're not able to control those like we are able to control the three technologies I mentioned earlier: marine cloud brightening, mirror reflection, and ICE 9/11. These are all things that are surface-based technologies that are easy to reduce their effects if we go too far in the cooling. So yeah, we are out here doing it. We just need more attention, and it's the governments and the news agencies that are making it seem like there's we have more time than we do. 10 years is a longer. You know, if we wait 10 years or towards the end of 10 years, it's way too late. We need to start, you know, further these projects within the next couple years in order to avoid a lot of death and catastrophe on the planet. And with that, I pass the talking feather.
Connectors. There was a lovely gentleman on Humanity Rising a week or two, 3 weeks ago, planning to create a network of connectors centered around the United Nations, which is okay. I mean, the United Nations connectors are would involve big companies and governments and stuff like that. But we need more than that. We need to figure out how to convince people at our level, the little people, how to contact other little people or other groups to make sure that they know that we know that they're out there. And just that much additional connectivity will be useful. And then it can get further. If it appears to be working, it can go further than that. But to start a movement of people finding out who they can actually talk to in other climate conscious organizations, so that they are breaking across the barriers between groups that don't know each other. I don't know if this crew has seen the Strength of Weak Ties little cartoon that I have. You've seen it. Okay, so we need people who are bridging various networks from one to the other. And we need to activate as many of those people as we can, and then get the people within those more activated networks to also begin more activation of their networks, because we got a whole lot of people to try to talk to. But it really needs to happen person to person. We've always heard that sales are best done by word of mouth. So we need to have people who are willing to talk and make friends, and then write down who their friends are, so we know, so other people can find out who they are. Okay, and the other thing I recommend that we use this concept, the conversation, as a place where anybody can call and find out, oh, you know, who's doing work in Nova Scotia, or who's in South Carolina, and we have our other networks database, or any other database, or just our willingness to look things up for people would be helpful. So we need people who are here standing by, 24/7, which is a good concept for the conversation. 24/7, somebody's here who can answer questions, make relationships happen, make connections, and help people feel like, oh, well, I can participate in something. I'll stop there.
Well, I would go so far as to say I know what you were saying there, Stanley, and it sounds great, and that is the way to go. We have to get connection in order to spread awareness, and of course we have to make the right connections to make and spread the right awareness again as well, obviously, and through groups in the societies or networks like that, making connections, you have a broader span as well, and I mean some would instantly like say or refer to what you were saying there now, like getting to know somebody as friends and get to know their friends and everything. Someone would turn around and say something like the likes of sure Facebook is for that or whatever, but that has turned into something that I'd call a little bit of a monster that's been awakened really, and it's really more or less some, you know, for me anyway, a way of passing rude notes under the door, and it's actually not really the connectivity that you're that we would be wishing for anyway, but there is something available to us and there is something coming to us, and it is a proper connecting network like this. So with the help of God, it'll all come together shortly. But I just like to assure Umair that there is agency, there are people out there, there is work being done. People are desperately trying to figure out a way to bring about the awareness to the masses so that we can actually connect and cooperate together in order to do something about saving our only ship in space. You know what I mean? Simple as that. So we have to come together now because, let's face it, as I said, 25 cop-outs and they still haven't copped on. So they've proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that they're not working for us. Passing the fiddle.
Yeah, I would first like to address the premise that we have, 10 years left to figure out solutions. I would say we have more on the order of months to implement known solutions. The most impactful of which, the single most impactful of which, are solutions within a class called SRM, Solar Radiation Management, which is the only means available to us right now, the only one to cool the planet in time to save life on Earth. If we do not implement SRM at planetary scale within the next, say, 9 months, 10 months, we are staring down the barrel of an ice-free Arctic in the summer of 2022, at the latest 2023. Look in the description, please, for a link to a 10-minute video by Guy McPherson, who's been mentioned several times in the comments on your articles, Umair, where he presents the latest scientific evidence, peer-reviewed scientific literature, and the most recent of which is research done by the Scripps Institute of Oceanography about the rapidly melting Arctic. We've got 20% of the Arctic ice left. If you look at it from a satellite, it looks like it's shrunk a bit, but the thickness has just collapsed. And so we're skating on extremely thin ice up in the Arctic, and it'll all disappear if we do not cool it. There's only one mechanism for cooling it: solar radiation management. Please also check the link in the description of this YouTube video to marine cloud brightening, a video put on by Professor Stephen Salter, University of Edinburgh, who is the current leader, thought leader and engineering leader of marine cloud brightening, which urgently needs the world's attention and resources because it is by far the most efficient and least intrusive way of implementing SRM to cool the planet. So we've got months left, because if we have an ice-free Arctic, say by next summer, that is going to cause a whole new additional heat load and the loss of the air conditioner of the Northern Hemisphere, which is the Arctic ice, which so far has been bravely bearing the brunt planetary overheating of the northern hemisphere anyway. I call it the martini effect. Imagine you're holding a martini. It's got a couple ice cubes in it. What's the temperature of the liquid? 0 degrees centigrade. You're holding it, you know, you're at the party, hanging out, minutes pass, tens of minutes pass, and the ice in your martini glass shrinks and shrinks and shrinks. As long as there's even a sliver of ice in your glass, the temperature is at a constant 0 degrees centigrade. As soon as that last sliver disappears, bink, temperature spikes. Temperature spikes. And jet stream, Gulf Stream weather patterns, all bets are off. What we're experiencing this summer, 2021, is going to look like a bump in the road compared to driving off the edge of a cliff. It's going to be really, really bad next summer, unimaginably bad. So we've got months to actually, number one, stop the exponential rise in temperature and then reverse it. And we can cool the planet. We just need to apply solar radiation management in whatever proportion we wish to cool it, however quickly we wish to cool it. But at a minimum, we need to stop the overheating. Every second that passes, the Earth takes in more heat than it sheds, right? I think we're at somewhere around 3 watts per square meter or something, whatever the number is. It's multiplied by the entire surface of the Earth. It's a massive heat load that's melting the ice, warming the oceans, killing off life on Earth, reducing the ocean's capacity to absorb carbon, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we're there. We're right on the brink right now. We don't have 10 years left. I mean, these are delusions that have been imparted upon us by the same exact people like the Republican strategists who you mentioned, who gave us the term climate change to replace global warming. It's delusion, right? And to see that it's affecting you, Umair, is really, really disturbing. Guy McPherson has been pointed out to you numerous times, but instead of looking at the actual facts, the actual scientific data, instead looking at some processed cheese version of that called IPCC, which is extremely politicized and totally in bed with animal agriculture and big money, big banks, et cetera. It is just absurd to look to the IPCC for any kind of answers or any kind of truth. That's a great place to look for delusion. But we need to, we really need to understand our enemy much better here and not eat the crap that our enemy dishes out towards us in order to pacify us. So the urgency is extreme. Every day counts at this point, which is why we are going full bore on not just solar radiation management, but bringing together other key solutions and rolling them up into one big attention-getting mechanism, which we've spent most of the day today working on, most of the previous 8 hours working on, which I'll recap very briefly in a few minutes or in a little bit. But suffice it to say that now is the time for radical action, and now is the time for coming together as humanity, as a collective intelligence, evolving towards collective superintelligence, defined as a network of conversations very much like this one, but spanning the full gamut of topics of all the world's problems and all the solutions that are on the table and all the solutions that are under development and all the solutions that people thought of just yesterday. We need to create this massive network as a massive collective sense-making machine and filtration machine, filtering out the lies and deception and passing through the pure signal of the problems, the solutions, and exactly what we need to do. And the best ideas can bubble to the top if we organize ourselves sufficiently and really commit to this, commit to coming together and working together. Anyway, with that, I'll pass the feather. Plenty more to say, but I like to pass around the feather, passing it on.
Well, I'll just say that we have no other choice but to do it, to commit to each other, to come together and to try and create awareness and everything. Because the IPCC report, simple and plain, was an acceptable report. It was accepted by the system. It was it was accepted by the system to release that report. It wasn't and wouldn't have been acceptable by the system to release the truth. So they allowed them to release this report, and it is ridiculous, the report, and it is ridiculous what they're asking and telling the masses. They're lying to the masses. As Professor Peter Carter said, this is not climate change anymore. This is a crime. This should be referred to as a crime. It's mass genocide, simple and plain. There's no other way of explaining it, he said. So this is ridiculous, and the majority of the world doesn't even realize it's happening. So it's all out, and all everything has to be thrown at it, like, and everybody has to get on board, because our leaders are not doing their job, simple and plain.
Right.
They're looking out for the interests of the 1% and themselves.
My question becomes, what are the best databases we can find on climate change? What are bibliographies that we can find that show us who's been writing what? Where are we keeping the research that we need to refer to understand what we need to understand? And so I'm saying we need a library.
If you go to Guy McPherson's naturebatlas.com, you'll see he has all the peer-reviewed literature. Everything that you need is there for all the reports that he makes his reports on. The misapprehension a lot of people have about Guy McPherson is they think that what he's saying is coming out of his own head, but that man is not repeating. He's only repeating peer-reviewed literature from the basis of an ecologist, and he knows what he's talking about when he's talking about extinction events and our environments and everything else. So all his literature, every peer-reviewed paper that he's mentioned, he has links to it on Nature's Batlas.
All right, so I need to have that listed in other networks. What's the URL for it?
naturebatslast.com. No, sorry, GuyMcPherson.com. I'll put it in the chat.
Put it in the chat, and that will get us a start. And I need all of us putting all of our links such as this into other networks so it can be searched and coordinated. Let me show you where I'm starting. If I can share my screen. No.
Oh, sure. Here, let me give you the ability to do that. Okay, go ahead, Stan.
All right, are we still recording? Yes, we are.
We are still recording.
So what I want to show is here's Stephen Salter's page on Wikipedia, which is a very useful thing, which is how I found out of the term marine cloud brightening, because he's been one of the leading voices of the marine cloud brightening movement. That's how I found that term. So we have our own way of collecting stuff. I call it other networks. And on other networks, I have created the beginnings of what I call a climate resource page.
Stan, are you intending to share what you're talking about?
Oh, it's not sharing?
No.
I thought I was. Okay. Yes. I had asked you for permission to share. Let me share my desktop so it will give us more flexibility. All right. So here is the climate resource page on other networks. And we can have as many pages as we want. We can have these organized in any fashion. We should have pages that list other pages and so on. There's a lot of material that's out there. We need to understand it in the terms that we, the people, can use. Having scientific material only in the language that scientists use means that it goes right over people's heads. So we need the articles that are written for people and the videos. Okay, so the marine cloud brightening, I have list to item to the video that on marine cloud brightening. And we can have a lot more of that stuff. And here's a link to the Wikipedia article on marine cloud brightening. And the name Guy McPherson has been said many times, but I don't know, it's not here yet. So if you're going to put something for that in the chat, I can put it here. But also, what I really, really, really need is for people to go to the main page of other networks and click on this form that says add a page to other networks. Tell me the name of a page that you think ought to belong in our library. And then it asks for what is. So the first part of it says here we can get started. The first question is, what is the title of the page? The next question is, what is the URL for the page? The next question is, who are you? So I don't think, so we know that this is reliable. People that we already know don't have to fill this out so detailed. And then there's places to put editorial headline and a description. You could put almost as much information into this spot as you want. What is this page? I call them the target page. What is it about? And you get most of that information from their about page. So we need to have this so that we can search the words in their websites and find out more people who are doing more things. We have to bring people together. And this is a tool for doing just that. So when we look at a category, I have a category that I'm going to search category for the word Earth. Finding the categories that have the term Earth, where planet Earth is where somebody's located, serves planet Earth, issue planet Earth, issue Earth science. So the most important one right here is these are all organizations or websites that serve planet Earth. These are the people we should be starting with in our one-on-one conversations with the members of these places so that we can make connections among them and we learn how to act as connectors. So we are connecting this one with that one, with this one, with that one, because they wouldn't have otherwise, if we didn't take the task on, they wouldn't have otherwise found each other. I'm going to stop there. And I forget where, oh, there's stop sharing.
Beautiful, Stan. And I'd like to, are you done talking or do you have?
I'm going to stop for now and see if you have any comments on what I just showed you.
Yeah. I want to editorialize on what you just said. Dear Umair and Umair's audience and our audience, what you just saw is a beautiful example of humanity, in this case, Stan and company, forming a database to help humanity get connected with each other and with facts and vital information pertaining to saving, healing, and transforming life on Earth. Notice that you don't see Stan sitting there complaining about why isn't Joe Biden doing this or why isn't someone else doing this or no, he's just doing it. And we'll see other examples in a little bit, but I just wanted to give you major kudos and thanks, Stan, for your amazing life's work, which has culminated in other networks, Community Magic, the chat people, and so many other cool platforms that you're doing and experimenting with. We're here co-creating and experimenting with different platforms here. Sometimes we fall flat on our face, other times we have successes. But we are out there swinging. We are out there. We recognize our agency, our individual agency, and much more importantly, our collective agency to come together and do our very best to save, heal, and transform life on Earth. And in the process, transform ourselves, transform each other, and become a collective intelligence, among many other beautiful things. With that, I pass the feather. Thank you.
The next level after what I was just talking about is to collect the collections, because there are numerous collections of information that's already collected. It's just not connected to other collections. So one of the most amazing collection of problem information in the world is called the Encyclopedia of World Problems and Human Potential. It has more than just problems. It also talks about human potential. And this is a database having been organized for 50 or 100 years. I'm not sure. The organization, the Union of International Associations, has been in existence for 100 years. And their work over the last 20, 30 years has been to compile this gigantic, I guess that's a word, database of problems. And they do it by describing the problem. You put in climate, they'll talk about climate. Then they'll say, what are the related problems? What are the problems that are more expansive? What are more less expansive? And then who is working on these? And they have 35,000 organizations in their current yearbook. 35,000 organizations working on the problems that they list in the encyclopedia. Over time, since the encyclopedia has been published, they claim to have been publishing information about over 75,000 organizations, but not all of them exist any longer. So that's, I mean, and I can show you the other networks page for the Encyclopedia of World Problems, but let's move on to the next thing. How many of these kinds of databases are there? I don't know yet. I need you to tell me when you find one.
Yeah, you know, this is an interesting problem of, I would say, decentralized networks of information, right? Because you're not out there saying, hey, I want to be the information source XYZ. No, you're saying, hey, I am an information source. Now, we do quite a few meetings in this Zoom room and participate in meetings in other Zoom rooms. And so a few months back, it occurred to us that, hey, you know, there ought to be some sort of an, you know, kind of an open source, you know, blockchain-like resource of decentralized of all the transformational meetings and events that are happening. And so we started a project called the Chrysalis Calendar, since one paradigm is that we are in a chrysalis state. Humanity, life on Earth is in a chrysalis right now. And so we started the Chrysalis Calendar, chrysaliscalendar.org, to post our events on, and also to be an example for others to build upon or learn what not to do or whatever, but just a very humble example of that kind of thing. And not that we would, again, not that we would seek to be the only one or the best one or anything like that, but setting an example of a Chrysalis calendar, we would love to encourage other Chrysalis calendars to form and connect with each other. Now, how might we connect with each other? I don't know. We're working on that. And here's the thing, we're daring to go out and play on the skinny branches of life and global transformation, which means leaping before we look, trying things before we know what the end results will be, and certainly doing things that have no financial business model whatsoever, though some folks are working on projects with business models. You know, it is time for a renaissance of human potential and human connection and co-creation and collective intelligence. And so we are, you know, little striving, you know, mini wannabe Michelangelos, you know, chiseling on rocks, you know, busting a knuckle every now and then and keeping on going, keeping on. So Stan, you're providing wonderful examples of media that we're in the process of, you know, testing out. One of the things that Lauren mentioned, you know, a while back that I really love is, you know, we're going to have to get comfortable using crappy software and testing out different things and, you know, experimenting. As we break through and break the chains of our bondage to the capitalist system and the toxic paradigms we've grown up in. I'm going to pause for a second. I'll be right back. All right, sorry about the pause there. Stan, please carry on.
Okay, well, I just was remarking on the fact that we should be looking for software that does good things, and don't worry about what status it is. We want to make it better. We want to make it to be more functional, but we shouldn't pan it just because it's not fully functional or as polished as it could be. So yeah, I don't particularly like calling a piece of software crappy. If it's not up to snuff, we want to improve it.
I agree. Totally agree.
And my other question for this group is, what do you know about seeds?
My short answer is not enough.
Okay.
Barely
Well,
scratching the surface.
I'm starting a research project on seeds. And from what I have seen so far, this is the most advanced body of thinkers. I don't even want to call it an organization. It's not an organization. It's a body of thinkers. It's people who are getting together pretty much on a very rapid time frame to try to understand the nature of society as we wish it to be. And they are working on the governance process and the planning process and the utilization process. And they have a piece of software that allows them to exchange wealth value with each other. And the exchange of value with each other is the piece that we don't want stolen away from us as the big money people have done. They've taken the possibility of all of us away from us to exchange value together as small groups. They control the process of exchanging value. And so we need another process. We need to go around it. We need to do as Buckminster Fuller says, if you don't like the system that's there, build a better one. And I'm watching them, and they are building. Whether it will be the best one to come along, we don't know that. But we need to know what it's doing, and we need to know anything else that's doing similar kinds of work, because they are looking to create a egalitarian system for people to participate in the management of the economy, and they don't really need to have the economy be just on counters. They have a whole section in their thinking about gratitude. How do we deal with gratitude as a means of compensating each other or rewarding each other for the contributions to the society or to individuals. So I would love to have more help in researching this group, and this is not a good spot for me to start showing you the pages that I've been building in other networks for seeds, but they have a lot of material, and some of it is really dynamite. A lot of it is like meetings where people are saying, oh, I'm checking in, and then they go through 60 people checking in, and it's not exactly the easiest thing to watch, but you can skip through that part. And one of the things that I'm developing now is my understanding of who those people are, and I'm trying to gather the names of people who I think are not just at the top end. There's a gentleman, and I'm awful with names, who is the most widely acknowledged spokesperson for the process. One of the things that I found fun was that they have 4 ways to spell the word seeds. 3 ways, excuse me. Seeds with all caps is the ecosystem of people using these, belonging to this process, the environment. Seeds with a capital S is the name of their money. Seeds spelled with lowercase is what you plant when you want a tree to grow.
Super cool.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And one of the things, I don't know if either of you, any of you saw Jane Houston on Humanity Rising last Friday. Her uh, speaker and her wrote a book together, and I haven't gotten the book yet, but the co-author of the session on Friday with Jane Houston. Do you guys know who Jane Houston is? She's a human potential movement uh, star. Okay, the Beatles. Okay, of the human potential movement from the '60s, and she's still walking around giving talks and encouraging life on the planet. And the talk was about the emerging human. That's what her subject was last Friday, the emerging human, and right up our alley here. But the other thing that I picked up while I was watching the two of them speak is that the co-speaker, and I'm awful with names, but her name starts with an A, but she is one of the authors of the Constitution that the Seeds people have been writing for the last 2 years. She's acknowledged, I was reading it, and she's acknowledged in one section as having provided certain salient points of philosophy for their Constitution. And I was very impressed that she was in on that. She didn't speak about it much on Humanity Rising last week, but now I've seen her name in their materials. So, and we need to look for more groups like that. The Encyclopedia of World Problems has a staff and has hundreds of organizations who are members of the association, maybe thousands. And the seeds process is building like a snowball. They have groups of people that are meeting at least weekly, some of them more than weekly. It's a little boring to watch all those videos, but I've been giving it a shot and categorizing the different videos that they have created. They have an enormous space on YouTube, and I have high hopes for what they're trying to do. I can't say right now that they're going to succeed and create the new world economy, but they're one of the few people that are really actually thinking about what should a world economy that runs on people's willpower, what should that look like? And it's not a United Nations of people. Okay, it's not something where we have representative government and nobody really has a say in what goes on. Okay, so those of you, I know Marco and Jamin know about Sign, John Raymer's organization.
Yeah.
That's another one that have a fairly extensive database of people who are interested in specific things and talking about them. I just asked John, why am I not on their wheel? So he says he's going to put me on their wheel. They have this fun diagram that shows several hundred people and organizations that spins around, and you can point to a person's picture and it'll show you who they are. But they ran the World Unity Week, and World Unity Week was run by them and several other organizations, and we need to have those people reporting back to the rest of the world more than what they did on World Unity Week. And
Yeah, it's funny. We've had an interesting history with the Sign Network. They have launched no fewer than 3 very significant character assassination attempts against me. Each of them coincident with a significant innovation that we've launched here, including the conversation and the press conference. The pressconference.org is something that we're in the process
still
of.
want to record this?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Because I think the truth needs to come out, because here's the thing. In my experience, you get what you tolerate. And if we tolerate character assassination attempts within the transformational community, we will get more of them.
We will also get nowhere.
Exactly. So, yeah. So we're just practicing. I'm practicing intolerance of character assassination attempts that are based on purely on lies, right? They have made up just horrific lies about me and then promulgated those lies and sought to destabilize what we're doing here on the basis of those lies.
Sorry to hear that.
But it's very interesting. I think that there's really interesting things to learn from all this, because their network is based on a profit model. And I believe that money is contaminating their model and their organization and their leadership. And, since what we do here is completely money free, I think they felt threatened by what we're doing here, for example.
Well, I don't know the monetary basis for their work, except that they have a Patreon and I give them some money every month. So I don't see them making money on anything else. But that's not a good topic for this conversation, I don't think.
Anyway, so I mentioned the press conference. We're relaunching the press conference in September, and we're relaunching it coincident with another platform that we've been developing called Food Healers, which is committed to making nutritious, delicious plant-based foods freely available to everyone as a public good. Umair has written extensively about the importance of public goods and how the United States, for example, invests, a pitiful amount, a pittance in public goods, and he's linked that to the downfall of our society, economy, et cetera, et cetera. And so, rather than try to incentivize the government to invest in public goods, we're simply finding grassroots ways of doing that in a way that can grow and snowball. And so we're relaunching the press conference on September 23rd, including, this just came up in the last couple of days, having these public spaces, like imagine a big tent canopy with reflective material on the roof, which is an example of solar radiation management, reflecting sunlight back into space, and provisioning gourmet stew, gourmet plant-based stew for free, along with cucumber, melon, water, ice cold, and also at the same, under the same tent, having tree saplings that we give away. And of course, people can donate if they want to, but any monies that come in go straight to the food program, feeding people for free. You're all familiar with the community cafe image that I'm flashing on my portion of the screen right now. We started that back in 2015. So these are outgrowths and evolutions based on that model. And we're also going to have the press conference live streaming from the space, which will be called the coolest place on earth, with the reflective roof and sides and everything. And people will be able to participate in the press conference at the coolest place on earth, while enjoying free food and beverages and music. And so we're creating community. Umair has written quite a bit about how there is just pitiful levels of community and community engagement and people engaging with each other here in the United States. So that's something that beckons to be transformed as well. And so we're getting out there and doing that as well. So with the press conference, the idea is that anyone who has a transformational idea or project or organization, nonprofit or movement or group of any kind, it could just be one person with an idea, can present at the press conference their idea. And this is one mechanism, a very kind of rich dimensional live broadcasting and recorded video format for people to connect with each other and share themselves and what they're doing, to be able to connect with others, other individuals and organizations. So just wanted to mention that as yet another platform that we're developing for saving, healing, and transforming life on Earth through people coming together. And solar radiation management is one of the best kept secrets that everyone needs to know about and needs to be involved in supporting, because from a technological standpoint, we are so close to being able to cool the planet through planetary scale implementation of solar radiation management. As I mentioned earlier, the main, most efficient method that we know of doing that is marine cloud brightening. So through the press conference and through these community engagements, to which we're going to be inviting myriad media, notably Amy Goodman, Democracy Now!, Umair Haque. Umair, you're invited to participate and present at the press conference, so people can get to know you through that venue as well. And through this and myriad other media, you mentioned Humanity Rising, et cetera, we're participating in this growing network of media to help people get connected to each other and organizations and projects for saving, healing, and transforming life on Earth. So I wanted to put that plug in. So look out for the press conference. Look at thepressconference.org for recordings from our last press conference. And we seek to do this on an ongoing basis. Passing the feather.
All I want to say there to that is, for those who don't understand or know about the technology of marine cloud brightening and solar radiation management, it sounds, well, to the average person on the street, from what I know and what I've spoken, or who I've spoken to, the average person when they hear anything about solar radiation management or marine, cloud brightening, they think of the idea of injecting sulfur particles into the stratosphere, and there's, science says that that's not the best way to go. So this is by no means something like that or to that kind of extreme. It's actually only using the use of seawater and a natural process that occurs anyway on the Earth. It's just to increase that natural process enough to send more salt crystals into the clouds and brighten them that way. So it's a natural process with natural elements, and automated as well, so that there's no energy put into it other than the manufacture of the actual vessels themselves. It's definitely the least invasive way, but it's also definitely out of people's reach because they'd know nothing about it. We have to let people know that there are answers to our problems, but there are people who are doing nothing about it.
Yeah, thank you, James. I agree wholeheartedly. And I'm going to make an assumption at the risk of what we all know making assumptions can do is make an ass of me and you. And I'm going to assume that Umair, you wrote the article based on, there is nobody working on the answers. And I assume you're writing these articles to draw attention to the situation and bring the solutions to the forefront. And if I'm wrong in that assumption and you really don't know about the many possibilities for saving the planet, please join us and be enlightened.
Yeah, I will have to say there that sorry, Marco, I'll just have to say that, yeah, your assumption was slightly out there, all right, because he did say that there are groups out there trying to do something, but they're small and few, and exactly what the problem we're talking about, they're not connected. But there's a lot more, I think, than he believes. Or I would, at least, I like to think there is a lot more. I know there's a lot more anyway, but whether he believes it or he's aware of it, I can't say.
Yeah, true. And add to that, invitation to all your readers as well to come join us and be enlightened.
And let me get back to the event on September 23rd, the press conference, which has these other elements that I discussed. There are 5 major solutions that are rolled up into one in that event. One is feeding everyone, making nutritious, delicious food a public good, a human right. Number 2, going plant-based. These are plant-based foods, encouraging the world to go plant-based by example, encouraging the world to try vegan food, plant-based food. Because in terms of the destruction of the biosphere, animal agriculture is not just the #1 driver, it is the lion's share of both destruction of the biosphere and planetary overheating, right? There's a book that's coming out called Food is Climate, and it's all about this. The destruction of the Amazon is driven by animal agriculture. So plant-based, feeding everyone, and the feeding everyone is just the first in a series of dominoes of making basic human needs, basic human rights, and providing public goods to all people so that we lift people out of poverty, first out of abject poverty, out of hunger, and then out of houselessness and dearth of health care, et cetera, et cetera. So basic public goods, plant-based foods, eliminating animal agriculture, planting trees, restoring forests, restoring ecosystems, cooling the planet with solar radiation management, and collective intelligence through the press conference, through the conversation, through the block party, through Dear Umair, through the myriad forms of media that Stan has mentioned here. So it's one single event that we're going to make a recurring event. That's the plan, that's the intention, though right now we're just focused on the September 23rd event. I'd like to see it be a monthly event, the press conference. But in one single event, hitting all those 5 check boxes, right? Because it's the last one, collective intelligence. It's really collective agency manifest through a network of conversations, a network of media, networks of people and organizations coming together and working together to co-create and implement all the solutions that we need to save, heal, and transform life on Earth. So, one of the things that we can do, Umair, is participate in these media, write about them, publish them. Don't just write about the world's problems, write about these solutions as you become aware of them, and encourage people through your own example. Umair, imagine you start showing up at some of these Dear Umair sessions and we're able to talk with you directly about these things. How cool would that be? And then we encourage your audience to come and participate. Come one, come all. If 1,000 people show up here, we break out into breakout rooms or other Zoom rooms, right? And really help grow the network of conversations. There is so much that we can do together to forward humanity coming together to save, heal, and transform life on Earth. We are the catalysts. So let's get together and make it happen. Passing the talking feather. All righty. Are we complete? Are we getting towards completion? Let me pause recording for a moment. All right. Well, thank you so much, James, Stan, Marco, and everyone for participating in this lively discussion on Dear Umair. And please come join us. More information in the description on how to do that, Zoom link, and our current schedule and whatnot. We'd love to have you. And thank you so much, Umair, Umair's audience, and all of us. And we look forward to seeing you next time on the next Dear Umair. Thanks, everyone.